Hey everybody, it's Robert Dunt from ArtTop10.com, and I'm really excited to be here today with Juan Bolivar. Juan, hello.
Hi Rob, how you doing?
So this exhibition, it's absolutely fantastic. It's got kind of beautiful, crazy, hard-edged madness, these meticulously extraordinary canvases that I want to ask you more about how you actually make these crazy things, and then a sort of bit of humor and kind of cartoon madness. So just tell us a little bit about how it all came together, and maybe
I like the way that madness runs both through hard-edge abstraction and the cartoons. So that's an interesting observation. Maybe we can return to that later.
Yeah, definitely.
So where shall we start?
So tell me, what's the exhibition called? The show? It's called.
The exhibition is called Powerage.
Yeah, and is there a reason for that?
Well, Powerage is the fifth album by one of my favourite bands called AC/DC. Oh. And if you are a fan of AC/DC, if you're like a sort of connoisseur of AC/DC, then it's considered one of their sort of purest albums. It's kind of it's one of, a true fan, that will select that one rather than Back in Black. Which is the one that most people would know.
Okay, I love it. I didn't know there was a bit of a rock and roll ethic lurking behind the whole thing.
It's all rock and roll.
Baby, I love it.
It's all rock and roll. And this is my second show at JGM Gallery, which is just opposite the Royal College in Battersea. That's where we're at the moment.
In London.
And in London, England, UK. And my first solo exhibition here was called High Voltage, which was titled after their first album.
Yeah.
Previous to that, wait for it, I've done a show also called Back in Black.
Nice.
So I haven't done them in any order chronologically, but I have done, this is like the trilogy, Back in Black, High Voltage, and now Powerage.
I love it. So this is your third album?
Yes, it's my third album with the band, yeah. So
and you're going to get rid of the drummer next time and stuff?
Well, no, listen, there's a lot more to drummers than meets the eye. I think drummers like hard-edge painting sometimes get sort of slightly misconstrued.
Okay. So before we start having a look at more of it individually, would you say there's a kind of overarching, theme to this album? Or a vibe or a feeling? I mean, from what I've seen before, you've got more cartoony element.
Yeah, when you say theme, am I able to have like a sort of multiple choice?
Oh, yeah.
Like if you give me say 5 boxes, I might be able to tick one.
Oh, yeah, okay. So, shall I give you different boxes to go for?
Yes, of course. And then I can
say... rock and roll madness?
It's more like a footnote, but I wouldn't say it's a theme of the show.
Okay.
Carry on, next.
Hard-edged abstraction?
Again, that's more of a sort of methodology and context, but not necessarily the theme. But carry on, we're getting closer though.
A contrast between abstraction and
now
cartoons.
It's closer. It's something to do with contrast, I think.
Okay.
Something to do with tension and friction and things colliding. Yeah.
Okay.
So that could be closer.
Humor.
But also tragedy.
Oh, baby.
And the thing is that maybe the two are inseparable.
Okay.
But we do tend to focus on... I think the humour is what draws you into maybe wanting to be with the work. And I think maybe, I don't know why that's the case. But I think also there's a flip side to it. There's But anyway, so... Humour is not. It's not. I'm not out to hey, let's get people.
Let's roll it around.
That's not so much. If you think about it, it's actually quite. It relates more to sort of cognition, perception.
Okay.
Wittgenstein. If you think about the duck rabbit in Wittgenstein.
Okay.
The duck rabbit image.
Yeah.
So at this point we edit and we have the duck rabbit image. So it's likewise with these. Why is it that we see things? Why do we see shapes? Why do we suddenly associate those shapes with certain feelings? And the thing is that some people might recognise the characters, but they might not recognise the paintings that these characters have been placed against.
Yeah.
So it's also to do with what we're able to perceive, what cognitively we're able to perceive because of our history, etc. So in some ways, that is also one way to think about power, isn't it?
Oh, I see. So you're almost trying to destroy the cartoon characters as cartoon characters and turn them back into shapes.
I wouldn't say destroy, but maybe reinvent or reframe or recontext, but not destroy. No, destroy.
Okay. Okay. Right. Well, that's really cool, actually. So I think let's go and start lurking around, looking at a couple of the more more
but
detail.
we've only did 3 boxes.
Oh, sorry, I was getting a bit carried away. 2 more boxes.
Yeah.
Right. Do I need to throw you some more things? Playing with art of the past.
Yes. Yes.
And
we'll go back to that because there are 2 elements to that. Yeah. In fact, 3 elements, or maybe I'll answer that now rather than sort of go back to it.
So as you were saying before, it's not so much humour. So I can't resist. So maybe more like Shakespeare, tragedy.
Well, it's everything.
It's slightly off the wall.
No, it's not. But it's the way that we are many things.
Yeah. And actually, the other thing I think is technical ability. I don't know. And they are very technically beautiful and intriguing in how they're made. Yeah, Juan. So we were just digging into those themes, and I was still trying to pick out a few more.
Tick a few more boxes.
So let me just, if I look at it and think, actually, colour, of course, would be something.
That's, in a sense, that's a kind of more recent realization for me that maybe actually colour has something to do with it, and something about the innate power of colour. What formalists were trying to tap into. That maybe that's a subject in itself, but that's actually been like a more recent thought, and I think the key word or the key theme to Google. Which would be associated with this work and what's informed it, is ideas to do with intertextuality.
I did an MA in Shakespeare.
I'm glad that's why you're laughing, because for a moment, honestly, my whole career was just like upside down. It's to do with intertextuality and Robert
I did an MA in Shakespeare influence, but it was basically Shakespeare and intertextuality, and I was thrown off, actually.
Really? So it's just interested in
because
sort of reigniting some.
It's reigniting some deep postmodern trauma.
About that for a little bit?
If you want to.
Yeah. So
well, if you take all those people like Derrida or Roland Barthes, whatever his name is, I always thought they were writing like beautiful poetry.
Okay.
But a lot of people would use it far more seriously to like pin down ideas. And I wrote these essays that I thought were like beautiful poetry, but they were slightly bizarre. They were about things like a combination of Hamlet wearing black and D.H. Lawrence coal miners being covered in dirt and stuff like that. Well, you see,
have you seen the comic strip?
No.
Oh, you have to watch the comic strip. It was like with sort of Rick Mail.
Oh, I remember them.
The comic strip.
Yeah.
And this is brilliant. And this a wonderful episode.
Yeah.
It's probably from the I think early 80s or maybe around that time, sort of mid 80s.
Yeah.
Where there is a kind of filmic, I guess you could call it a montage, intertextual montage, where you have Scarface, Al Pacino, mixed with the miners' strike.
Oh yeah. Cool.
And I can't remember, one of them plays Arthur Scargill, but he's also Al Pacino.
Oh, that's quite cool. Yeah.
Dawn French or Jennifer Saunders, one of them playing Meryl Streep. So you get this. So in some ways, that sounds a little bit like what you are.
Well, that's what I was doing, but they did not like it.
I'm sorry. We can maybe revisit that later. I'll leave you my email. Maybe you left out a bibliography. Did you leave out a bibliography? That's always like immediate.
Nah.
No. Okay. But these paintings operate in a similar way. So I think maybe chaos is part of it.
Okay.
And the kind of like friction and tension that occurs from those accidental sort of combination of things or deliberate combinations, but also asking perhaps for the viewer to find those connections through, I think it's a filmic term, they call it Easter eggs, where you can find a reference that maybe only a few people will know. So a lot of these paintings will have little references that perhaps some fans of Barnett Newman might connect with, but some people might not see at all because they're not familiar with Barnett Newman's work.
And how would you actually just define intertextuality, for example?
How would I define? Sorry, I'm sorry. I'm sorry. Going to sound like a kind of like Wikipedia entry, but I'm going to use Christeva's intertextuality, Julia Christeva's intertextuality, who describes that a text is a mosaic of quotations. Okay, so that would be, in a sense, first of all, asking us to consider that these paintings are text.
Yeah.
And that there's an element of quotation and reference going on, but also, wait for it, misquotation from Harold Bloom's idea of the anxiety of influence. So what I'm doing is actually misquoting intertextually these different sort of references within the painting, yeah.
I love it. It's brilliant. And it's taking me back to all the people I read on the MA I was thrown off.
We'll talk about that.
We'll talk about that later. Yeah. Anyway, right, let's go and focus in on one of these pictures. So, Juan, this one we're in front of. Tell me a bit about what's his name? That guy. I can't remember his name. What's the cartoon guy?
Well, before we get to the cartoon guy...
Sorry, yeah.
It's okay. The painting that we're standing in front is called Maesta.
Maesta?
Maesta, okay?
What's that
which
mean?
translates as majesty, okay?
Nice.
And it's composed of at least two elements that are, evident. And one of them is the guy that we're familiar with. The other one is the Morris Louis painting, which you may be familiar with. He's a colour-filled abstract painter who sort of poured paint onto canvas. So these are kind of schematic representations of pouring of paint. Okay. And in the middle of this, we have this character, which then often people will say, but why isn't he smiling? So again, we're kind of like drawn to this way of thinking, like, what's happened to the mouth? Why is it mute? Is there a narrative going on? Okay, so there's various ways of reading the work. There's various ways of kind of interacting with it. The way that I'm looking at it, or one way that I'm looking at it, is thinking about Duccio's Maesta from 1308 to 1311. Duccio is a Trecento painter from the Sienese school of painting, and he painted a very famous panel painting, two-sided panel painting, composed of multiple panels, which was presented at the altar on the church in Siena to celebrate victory in battle. You have to remember this would have been a tumultuous time, the plague, all sorts of things, and painting at the time was, and probably could I continue to be, painting at the time was a vehicle to a certain extent, drawing people and communicate ideas, religious ideas, that didn't need sort of written information, something that people could react to sort of immediately. So this frontal panel has at the middle, the Maesta has the Virgin Mary and Christ's child, who looks very serious, incidentally. And one of the things that Duccio and Giotto, I'll go to Giotto in a moment, but I'll talk about Duccio mainly. One of the things that Duccio was trying to do was create a different type of icon painting, which had more of a connection with people. The figures were more animated, they had slightly more volume, although Giotto develops the idea of volume later. But, Duccio begins with the idea of trying to create this sort of a sequence of figures in a panel that people could look at and almost read as a comic strip.
Nice.
So
that comic strip.
Exactly, thank you. At the side of the Virgin Mary and baby Jesus, there are 3 rows of saints. Okay. And if you look at, the original painting, Duccio's Maesta, 1308, 1311, you will find this kind of 3 rows of saints, which, in a sense, in my kind of intertextual, slightly chaotic, absurd reading, echoes the cascading flow of Morris Louis' strands of paint.
So basically, the Peanuts guy is like the Virgin Mary.
Or Jesus.
Or Jesus.
Or it could be, or either. It stands for both.
And these are the saints. These bits are the saints. That is freaky. I didn't know you were going to tell me that.
Freaky good?
Freaky good, yeah. Freaky good, of course. Yeah.
Okay, so the logic of the exhibition and how it developed over a period of time, because you have to remember it's something that developed. It's not something necessarily that I started with, but something that evolved during lockdown, and sort of going stir crazy, etc. The logic of the exhibition is that the paintings operate by placing these figures within spaces to echo panel paintings from sort of 1300 and 1400. Okay.
So the whole thing has got this panel painting. Each of the pictures.
The whole thing, and each painting is titled after either a religious theme or a painting that features. Because you have to remember, sort of Duccio's work, Maesta, is composed of multiple panels, and they're all titled differently. At the front, it was the side which was accessible to the public. They would sit in front of it, almost like going to the cinema, if you think about it. And the back of the panel had slightly more, how should I say, had scenes from the life of Christ, but in a slightly more, it's almost like for the connoisseurs. So that would have been for clergy people, exactly. It would have been almost like sort of like having like a sort of YouTube channel, and you can have a little tour. You can sort of, whereas the front panel was something that perhaps would appeal to people in a more sort of emotional level,
Intriguing. So I mean, that is really cool, but I didn't clock it, obviously.
Okay.
And I wouldn't. Do you feel the people coming in sort of off the street, as it were, do they need to I mean, they're not going to spontaneously guess that. Does it matter, or
I think we take for granted that with a lot of products of art history, we understand them now. But I think that if you showed a lot of people, I don't know, say for example, Duchamp's Urano or something, they would say, no, I don't need. Have a different one or something. Most people have an understanding of art because of the discourse that builds around it. So to a certain extent, I'm not saying that it's needed, but it's part of it. It's inexorably linked to it. But there is a catalogue. There is a press release. And actually, there are clues. So there are clues so that the paintings are titled in a certain way. So even if you don't necessarily make that connection immediately, it might be something that resonates later, through the persistence of the titling of the works in a certain way. So the painting behind you here is called Eighth Station.
That's
Eighth Station.
Eighth Station.
Eighth Station.
Eighth Station of the Cross or something, is it?
Thank you. Yeah.
Thank you.
Well done. Thank you. But it's also a kind of pun or a kind of intertextual little bit of friction, because Eighth Station is also the title of the Barnett Newman painting that this painting, in a sense, reenacts for the drama to take place. So it operates on both levels. It's Station of the Cross from the kind of like traditional point of view, but it's also in reference to Barnett Newman's. And the idea is that hopefully the reading of what something, something that might appear at first innocent or throwaway starts to get different resonance because of the life of Barnett Newman, and my sort of connection to his work.
Yeah, I'm intrigued actually, because I mean I knew it was something like Barnett Newman. I couldn't remember which one it was, but I mean I clocked that, and I clocked the cartoon character.
There's two Barnett Newmans, 3 Barnett Newmans, 4 Barnett Newmans, 5, 6, and 1 at the front. The one that Huck is on.
The one outside.
So I think there are 6, in fact 7 Barnett Newmans.
Another that one.
Earlier.
Oh, Powerage. Very sneaky.
And this is a very rare Barnett Newman, which has a kind of like horizontal.
I wouldn't have recognised that as a Barnett Newman at all. And
to continue with those kind of little games that the artist likes to play, the original title of the painting is Dionysius. And this is the title of the painting, Dionysius, because it kind of seemed fitting that maybe a dog could be called Dionysius, or something resembling, because they're never dogs. Nothing is ever the thing. It's only the thing that you think it might look like. But so it seemed fitting that.
I'm interested, because you've got the art thing, you've got the cartoon thing, but behind that you've got this depth of sort of crazy panel madness mixed with AC/DC. I mean, what more do you want? I mean,
exactly. It's trying to capture the totality of of a kind of experience, really, but trying to make it slightly confused or slightly confusing, because that confusion, in a sense, keeps the excitement, keeps the criticality. I think was it Derrida who spoke about aporia? Is it? Maybe.
I was kicked off the MA, man. I don't remember.
Yeah. And aporia is kind of almost like a state where you acknowledge those inherent contradictions or the blind spots in an argument in your own sort of argument, and by doing that you maintain the criticality of the text or the thinking. So Robert, we had a question from the audience.
Yeah, we did indeed. From the
was how does the artist paint the circles? So maybe we could talk about that for a little bit.
Yeah, I'd love to. Look at this. So this is based on a.
Yeah. So the painting that's been occupied here, it's a Kenneth Noland target painting. The original is much bigger, but I've made something that I can, in a sense, make through the technique that the painting is made with. And so I was explaining earlier, it involves, in this instance, masking out circles. So the circles have been made by sticking tape down and then cutting it very carefully with a scalpel to create a circular kind of masked area. I will then paint that area, and then we'll repeat that process until the whole target painting is finished. And then the target painting will sit there for a while. Sometimes it sits there for weeks or maybe just a couple of days. And then I have the eureka moment when I think, okay, you know what it needs? It needs this thing in the corner, or it needs this thing coming through the middle or to the side, etc.
I didn't realise that. I imagined you'd had it all planned from the beginning. But so you actually make the kind of remake of the
exactly.
abstraction.
It begins, I would say 9 out of 10 it begins that way, although sometimes I might have a good idea of what I'm going to do with it. But my preferred route into the work is to create this kind of reenactment first, live with it, say hello, just get to know each other, and then I think, you know what, this is what's going to happen. And that's quite important that it happens in that way, because the process of making the work can sometimes be a little bit mechanical. So I don't want to then plan everything and know exactly. I need something that I don't know is going to happen. Kind of characteristics of abstract expressionist painting, in that it happened live. It happened there and then. There wasn't like a little sketch that the artist then made a painting from. It has to happen in front of you. So there's something similar with these works, in that what you see is something that it's been performed in a sense, rather than sort of planned completely in advance.
Yeah, I like it. So I mean, do you kind of sit around with like sort of 50 different cartoon characters going, which one of these is going to work, or is it, or does it literally just sort of grow and build in your head? And
A bit of both. A bit of both. I mean, in a sense, we sit around with these characters. That's the thing. So even I don't have to physically in the studio have lots of images or whatever. We sit around with this kind of collective, in a sense, almost like a back catalogue of images, and I'm sort of tapping into the sort of shared sort of collective understanding of imagery.
I think it's quite interesting the way you talk about both the old abstract paintings, the panel paintings from the past that they relate to, and the cartoons. In that you actually feel, even if we can't remember them, that we're quite close to them. They're almost like an unconscious catalogue of history in your head.
Exactly. Which is what we do continuously when we look at painting. So, for example, it's very easy for people today to say a classical style of painting when they're talking about, whether they're talking about, I don't know, they might be talking about Rembrandt, or they might be talking about Raphael, even though, there's like, 200, 300 years apart, we have this kind of like very loose understanding, which actually goes back even further. It goes back to Trecento painting, which is a key moment in the development of Western painting, and in a sense, when I'm thinking about painting, when I'm thinking about modernist painting, and when I'm thinking about like the cartoon characters, they're all one thing. There's no difference between them.
Oh, I totally agree. There shouldn't be any difference between cultures in any way, or high art or low art. But no, a slightly weird question. Would you say if you'd never seen one of these Kenneth Nolan paintings, or you'd never seen a cartoon character, do you think there's like a sort of weird collective unconsciousness of this that exists in everybody, even if they haven't seen them? Is there something like flowing under the earth that's there?
Because of the things are designed, because of things like, if you go to IKEA, you probably are connecting with ideas of the Bauhaus without realizing. The way in which pictorial space was developed in Trecento and Quattrocento painting probably dictates the way in which we're able to look at the comic strip, cartoons, cinema. It's kind of probably one moment of consciousness that we live in through. I mean, you could go back even further. The first mark ever made, which is something like, 140,000 years ago, something like that. It's the first mark which we consider to have been made consciously, and it's a sort of zigzag mark that was found in a shell. And that zigzag mark is, weird enough, the same zigzag that Charlie Brown has on his jumper.
That's cool, actually. Yeah, it's nice. So you are saying there's a sort of collective unconscious living between everybody, which is kind of cool. So Juan, there's a little bit of Albers creeping in here.
There are sort of, again, all the paintings reenact a painting. In this case, I'm reenacting Joseph Albers, which is very influential artist in me in the past. But I'm also using it as a platform to create a different relationship to that work. And we have on the right a work called Darkness, and on the left we have a work called Healing of the Man Born Blind. So there is a suggestion in both works, although it might not be apparent at first, it's a suggestion of not being able to see for different scenes, different reasons. The character in this painting has the eyes shut. Yeah. It could be the darkness of sleeping at night, or it could be the darkness that we've lived for in the past 18 months during lockdown. And then equally, there's a suggestion here that also this character is not able to see, or that it's in a different form of darkness. So yes.
So the thing I'm curious about is did Albers actually paint in these colours? Are these actually? I have a feeling that's not an Albers. That one. Is it?
It is an Albers. It might come from a later work. I'm pretty sure this is a later Albers that it's in reference to. It could even be an edition work, and some of the edition works that Albers made, they have a sort of slightly higher sort of key colour, okay. But they are. They're also my colours, if you see what I mean. In that you kind of find a way to be Albers. So I mix the colours. And in a similar way, then I live with the painting before something happens.
Yeah, no, it's interesting because I saw this beautiful Albers. I think it was at Frieze or something, which was all dark blues and greys, and I tried to recreate it, and it was all a complete disaster, and I changed it, and then it ended up like one of my normal paintings. But it was weird; it lay around for ages.
And they're really different, also in the flesh, aren't they? The Albers, because you realise how. To quote Albers, when he painted, because he painted on masonite, on the back of masonite, so he didn't paint on the smooth side of board, he painted on the sort of rough side of board, and I applied the paint with a palette knife. And to quote Albers, he wanted the sensation of applying butter to toast, or jam to toast. He wanted, so they're very tactile paintings, even though they look sort of geometric, etc., etc. Whereas in my case, the paintings are more like a sort of synthesized version of that work.
Oh, synthesized, yeah, I like a synthesized version. That's quite tricky. Do you feel it's almost impossible to paint today without referencing art history, without referencing stuff we've seen?
That's a really good question, Rob. That's a really... it's not so much, is it possible to make it, but is it possible to see it without the reference as well?
Interesting,
both,
yes.
Both. What do you think?
Oh, I mean, I find myself constantly sort of including references to paintings in my work. I think it's impossible. It's just difficult to know, is it because we are constantly influenced by stuff we've seen, or like you say, do you feel you're kind of, for want of a better phrase, do you look ignorant if you don't include some reference?
Interesting. I don't know. I think there's two ways to think about this. Well, I'm sure there's many ways to think about it. There is one way which is somehow to strive for originality, and what a lot of people say these days, like your own style, which in my view is completely impossible. So then the other view is that somehow one approach is to acknowledge influence, but to, going back to Harold Bloom, to the idea to misquote influence, and through that kind of like misquotation, you achieve hopefully some kind of level of originality in the way that, Oasis quoted the Beatles without becoming a tribute band. They kind of somehow, make some kind of reference through a different aesthetic lens that will give them their sound.
No, I mean, wasn't it The Anxiety of Influence? Wasn't that one of Bloom's books?
Yes,
was it?
Yes.
Yeah, it was.
I mean, that's I think the famous line, isn't it? That he's sort of in a sense saying all art, although he mainly refers to poetry, but we've come to understand his thinking, broadly speaking. So, but all art moves through misquotation. That's what he's saying. It's a painting called Angel.
Okay.
It's based on, I think it's a 1960 Barnett Newman. It's before the Who's Afraid of Red, Yellow and Blue series, although it kind of relates to that series of works. And Angel's a little bit like, it kind of reads, through the lens of Duchamp Maesta because of angels, but also it's a little bit like Dionysius, is that I like the idea that angel could also be the name of a kind of dog or a pet or something. Yeah. And I was thinking about this recently because I've made over the years paintings of dog-like creatures. So these are the most exactly. So these are the most explicit kind of dog-like creature paintings that I've made. But I've made paintings of sort of things that resemble dogs and cats in the past. And I was thinking about the way in which linguists often use very simple examples like, dog, cat, or chair to explain ideas of the sign. And I'm thinking maybe the paintings in some way are playing with those ideas of language through these very sort of basic sort of forms. Interesting.
Very interesting, actually. And I think also we should just mention that the surface of these is actually quite fascinating. Yeah. I mean, it's obviously canvas, but you've layered that even background again and again. Oh, do you want to show Camera Master? Have a quick.
That stripe at the end is also, the whole thing is painted on this substrate here. If you come round through the side, cameraman, that's it. The side of the painting shows you that the substrate, in other words, the colour that the painting is painted on, is the same as the band of colour that we see on the front.
So basically, when you've got the band on the front, that's where you've just left it? Or did you repaint that?
No. I would have begun with a kind of canvas that is that colour. I would have masked that area, added the character, and then removed the tape so that then it's a kind of negative. I mean, sometimes they're done positively, but in this case, it's been made in a kind of negative masking sort of technique, yeah.
So how many layers would be on that red? Because it looks to me, it's thick.
Yeah, several. How many do you think? It's not many. It's not as many as an artist. Big influence on me, Peter Halley, who he does I think near 50 layers.
Oh really? I'd assume about 8.
There'll be at least 8 for the red. Maybe more, maybe 10 or 12. A combination of brushing and rolling. But for the underneath, there will also probably be maybe 6 or 7, and underneath that there might be also 2 to 4 coats of like a sort of grey gesso.
Okay, yeah. It's because the thing that people can't see is that the grain of the canvas is gone, but in what's remained is this rather beautiful texture, which is like a build-up of paint, but it's got a texture to it. It's lovely.
Yeah, I mean, the original Bardot Newman paintings probably operate in a similar way in that they don't immediately look rolled. I mean, he used primarily a brush, and they don't have that kind of like sense that paint has been applied. But at the same time, they don't read like prints. They read, a completely physical experience of the paint, which I think is part of the work as well.
Yeah, absolutely. And I love the way that the figures, if you look really carefully at the edges, there's like a millimetre sort of.
Probably more.
Proper,
Sometimes 2 or 3 millimeters where
they
you
pop up.
become aware that it's a physical experience. It's not been printed, and I think that's really important for the engagement with the work, that you've almost thrown off slightly by that sort of physicality of the work.
Yeah, and then there was something else that threw me off earlier as well, which is, what is that, Juan? I thought that might have been a part of the gallery, but my son, who is the cameraman today, was the one who clocked it, director and curator. Clocked that as one of your paintings.
Yeah, correct, Rob. You're not the first person who has looked at this and wondered, like, why do they leave an air vent up on the wall, etc. Some other comments, like yourself, is it looks like a speaker, and I really like the fact that it reads like a speaker when somebody's kicked through it. Because of the title of the exhibition is called Powerage, AC/DC's 5th album. So I do like that kind of like, in fact, I don't think it was Powerage, it might have been High Voltage. I can't remember, one of the albums, on one occasion, the music was so intense, actually, the sort of Marshall amplifier that Angus was playing through actually sort of caught fire, So there's a little bit of that in that. However, it also, as the cameraman / critic curator spotted, it's a fence. It's a fence that's been broken through. It's a sort of schematized fence, and there's a suggestion in my mind, in my kind of like intertextual sort of mischievous mind, that perhaps all of these creatures have emerged through this, they've somehow broken through this fence. And what we're looking at here in the corner is a kind of reenactment of one of Malevich's Black Square, which, when exhibited, often was hung in the same position, the corner of the room, because the corner of the room in this placing was a painting, was the way in which icon paintings were shown because of their importance. So in a sense, it kind of takes it back to this idea of icon painting and the way in which Malevich becomes the kind of icon through which everything that we see here today has come through.
That's really cool. I love it. Juan, that's so cool. And that is probably rather a beautiful, beautiful moment to wind it up. That is so cool. I love the idea that both the cartoon creatures and the paintings themselves are merged.
It's referred to as the year zero, the kind of moment when we reinvent. I think that's important. The language of painting.
Fantastic. Juan, thank you so much. I really enjoyed chatting with you today. Guys, please like and subscribe, and follow arttop10.com and keep up with what's happening. Thank you very much, Ron.
Thank you.
Cheers.
Bumbuckler.